Hello, and welcome back to Dungeons & Dragons Warriors of the Eternal Sun, with me, Dr. J. So the first thing that we're going to do here is check on the status of our party. It's been a while since I played this game, so please bear with me as I reacquaint myself with the menus. So I think I can go into the inventory to check on my party status. Now we see here that Dimmsdale has 10 hit points, and the reason is at first level, you actually don't roll your stats randomly in this game. You automatically get the maximum hit point value of your hit die. And since dwarves get a d8 hit die, he gets his maximum of 8 hit points and then plus 2 more for his constitution modifier, hence 10. After first level, our hit points will be rolled randomly, and unless I get really terrible values to the point that it could impact my ability to complete the game, I won't be save scumming to re-roll repeatedly to try to always get the best hit point values. Again, I'll only do that if my hit point values are so poor that completing the game actually becomes a problem. Now, I don't think it was ever an official rule that you get your maximum hit points on your first level in BXD&D, although many tables had a house rule to that effect. And that can kind of be considered a house rule for this game to help slightly improve the survivability of first level characters, even though they're still going to be extremely fragile. That was kind of a problem in most editions of Dungeons & Dragons, where first level characters are just stupidly easy to kill. Honestly, the edition of that was best about that was the edition that is maybe the most widely hated, 4th edition, or 4E, actually had maybe the most sensible rules about giving starting characters more survivable hit point values. But anyway, that's what we've got, so we're just going to have to deal with it. We also see that because he's not wearing any armor and he doesn't have a dexterity bonus, Dimmsdale has an armor class of 8, which is very poor. And because of his lack of a dexterity bonus, Dimmsdale is going to have armor class problems throughout pretty much the whole game, but hopefully his hit points will help to mitigate that. We're definitely going to be wanting to get him some proper armor to deal with that problem, though. And in case you didn't know, in BXD&D, basically up until 3rd edition, lower armor classes are better. Why it's backwards like that, I don't know, but it is. So the lower the better. And he requires 22 experience points to level up, which is slightly more than a fighter who requires 2,000. But again, that's going to be worth it because as a dwarf, he has better saving throw values, and that is going to help us out. Next up, we have Lucia, who has a d6 hit die as an elf and a +1 constitution, so she has 7 hit points. Even without any armor or a shield, she has an armor class of 6, thanks to her excellent dexterity modifier. That dex is going to give her really good AC, and it's going to help Lucia be a pretty effective tank, despite not having the same hit point values as Dimmsdale. Notice that crazily high amount of experience points that she requires to level up, though. 4,000. You might think, or might have thought, that being fighter mages sounded overpowered, because being good at both fighting and magic is pretty strong. But this is why elves are not overpowered, despite being good at fighting and at magic, because the amount of experience they require to level up is crazy. It's almost like it's simulating them being multi-class and having to level up both their magic and their fighting ability at the same time, even though technically multi-classing isn't a thing in BX Dungeons & Dragons. So that's an issue we're going to have to deal with. We also see that as an elf, Lucia begins play knowing the sleep spell. Now in pen and paper BXD&D, sleep affects, I believe, 4d8 hit dice worth of creatures. In other words, you roll 4 8-sided dice, and whatever value you get, you can put that many hit dice, not hit points, but hit dice worth of creatures to sleep, but they cannot have more than, I think, 4 + 1, which means 4 hit dice plus 1 extra hit point. Any monsters tougher than that are unaffected by the sleep spell, so it only works against low-level enemies. Now, I don't actually know to what extent it's implemented according to those rules in this game, so we're going to find out, because we're going to be using this spell and seeing how it does. Then we've got Greldon, who currently has no armor, no shield, and no dexterity modifier, so he has the worst possible armor class of 9, which is not great by any stretch of the imagination. 7 hit points, which is okay, and only requires 1,500 experience points to level up, so if nothing else, at least Grelden will get levels fairly quickly. But clerics in BXD&D don't start getting spells until 2nd level, so for the time being, Grelden is kind of weak. The weakest of all, though, at 1st level is going to be our magic user, Draven, who has only 6 hit points. He does have an armor class of 8 because he has a +1 dex, so even without armor shields, he has a little bit of an AC bonus, and he requires 2,500 experience points to level up. Presently, he just knows the magic missile spell, which does, I think, 1d4 +1 damage, if I remember correctly, at 1st level. It eventually gets better. It is currently not great, although it does have the very desirable attribute that it cannot miss. And since it gets more powerful, I believe at 6th level you fire 3 missiles, which in this game I think is just represented as magic missile doing more damage, so it will eventually become more powerful. That is the current state of our party. Right now we're kind of weaklings who are fragile and easily killed, but once we go out and get some experience, we'll start to become the proper heroes who will save the realm that we were always meant to be. Now, this game really rewards the player for exploring from the very beginning, because there are a lot of secrets to be found right here in the castle and in town. And those are going to greatly help our survivability as a 1st level party. So we're going to try to find all of those. But first, let's see if the Duke has anything new to say. Nope, this is just the same stuff that he told us when we first started the game. Except I think this is new, and I will reward you. I don't think he said that. So it's always nice to be given a carrot instead of a stick. And this guy says, I've heard a rumor there's a monster in the city's dungeon. We will soon be confirming whether that rumor is true or not. And here, in this room off the side, the music mysteriously changes when we engage this fellow in conversation. I don't know at what point the game actually tells you this person's name, but this is Marmillion, who is the Duke's advisor, and I think is implied to have some degree of magical powers. Marmillion, rather than the Duke, is actually kind of going to be our go-to quest giver for this game. The Duke kind of gives us the overall quest of go find allies, but otherwise it's Marmillion that we're going to want to be talking to. So he tells us, let me go ahead and do some more silly voice acting, because I kind of have fun with that. It is good to see our wise Duke has assigned this important task to such brave adventurers. Yes, indeed, Marmillion. Don't worry, we will get the job done. Please bring me any artifacts you find so that I may study them and learn more about this strange new world. I will pay you well for anything that can help me in my studies. Hopefully what I learn will benefit you as well. Well, Marmillion will be more than happy to bring you back anything of interest we find, especially when you promise us rewards. Now here is the dungeon. Let us investigate that rumor about there being a monster in here. Okay, so there's keys on the wall that fit into the door, which will allow us to gain access to the dungeon. The game periodically gives you text information like this to help flesh out the admittedly fairly uniform graphics. Kind of doing a little bit of scene building as though we have a dungeon master describing things to us, so I like that quite a bit. And we can bring up the map. I don't remember if there's a hotkey for that or if we have to go into the menu. The map is quite useful. And in here we discover a confined cell with only a grass mat. We've got some chains on the wall. And then in the next cell over, there's a Beastman! A Beastman warrior. Alright, good job. Grelden has taken him out. First kill goes to the cleric, to the holy man. Although he did manage to get a hit in on Dimsdale. And there's a giant rat in this cell. Managed to creep in. Dimsdale expeditiously dispatched that vile creature. Empty cell here. And then down this hallway, you enter a large area used for questioning prisoners. I think that's a polite way of saying this is a torture chamber, because this is a medieval fantasy world, so even though we have a, kindly, benevolent duke, by the standards of a world like this, even a good aligned ruler probably has something resembling a torture chamber for prisoners, so I think that's where we are. And as it turns out, there's a secret door here where we are going to find the first of our secrets. Gauntlets of Ogre Power. Now what these are going to do is give whomever equips them a strength of 18. So I'm going to go into inventory, and my 3 tankier characters all have a strength score of +2 right now. I'm going to go ahead and give this to Dimsdale, and actually I think I have to do transfer an item. That's right. Like I said, it's been a while since I played this game, so bear with me while I reacquaint myself with the menu system. Here you go, Dimsdale. Have a strength of 18. And let's try to pay close attention to the numbers to see if that is actually increasing his modifier to +3 or not. Because I'm not sure if it actually does, or if the gauntlets are only used for one very specific thing in this game. We'll find out. The lore has weakened us, says this man coming out of the dungeon. I believe it. Sounds like those goblins were kicking our butts, which is kind of embarrassing because goblins are not very tough enemies, but I guess there were a lot of them. Here it says, silver carvings line the corridor. And the smell of incense fills the air. The door to the south is carved of cherry wood. A small privy. So this would appear to be quarters belonging to someone of importance. Maybe the Duke, maybe Marmillion. But there is nothing for us to find in there, I don't believe. Some new spells don't work in this new land. Now, that is true from the point of view of the official campaign setting and pen and paper BXD&D. I'm going to explain in a lot of detail where we actually are, and it is true that not all spells work the same way in that place. However, in terms of this game, I don't think this statement is actually meaningful at all, because I don't think that the game gives you any spells that are supposed to work but don't, except as a result of bugs. Although maybe that was Westwood's sneaky way of pretending that that was intentional and not a result of sloppy programming. Here it says we are in a guard tower. A hatch bolted from the other side leads to the roof, and it appears that there is nothing of interest for us in here. The guard is not going to let us up onto the roof of the tower. This individual, who we can now see, says, the Beastmen seem more than savage. They are crazed. That's a little bit of a clue as to what's going on in this valley. An early, very subtle hint as to things to come. There are Beastmen in this valley, and they're not merely savage, they are straight up crazed. We're going to want to keep that little hint in mind. Here is the weapons shop. I'm going to check this out a little bit later. Likewise for the armor shop. This monk says, praise the maker that we have been spared. And there's another monk over here who says, okay, same thing. Now there's a bunch of graves here who, in the long and storied tradition of role-playing games, have humorous carvings on them. His wandering eyes soon caused his demise. Here lies Dwight, a knight he did smite. Come on. It's not always easy to read these. Here lies Louise, a thief shouldn't sneeze. Many ladies he cherished, and now he is perished. He quenched his thirst, but the water was cursed. Here lies poor Mel, he cast the wrong spell. He boasted of his might, but death was his plight. This dwarf was much feared till he tripped on his beard. Want to keep that in mind, Dimsdale. Keep that thing trimmed. Eric was given to Rome. All that's left is this stone. He's dead, Jim. Pop culture reference there. Here lies Todd. He angered a god. Well, that's not smart. They came, they saw, they died. This spot is reserved for Lucia. Well, somebody here in town has high expectations for us if they're already digging our graves. Thanks a whole lot, guys. How about this one? Draven. Yeah, like I said, thanks. Good to know that you guys are expecting us to get killed. So here is another secret area. A cleverly hidden door opens to a dusty cellar. Now, as you might expect, in terms of secrets to be found in the church or the shrine, these are healing related. So we just picked up some potions of healing and a staff of healing. The staff of healing is reusable that has a limited number of charges. Now you can cheese this by reloading the game if the staff breaks. You can basically make it last forever. I'm not going to do that, however. Whenever the staff breaks, I'm just going to say, alright, that's it, we lost the staff. So I'll try to save it for emergencies for that reason. This is the magic shop. So this guy sells magic scrolls. Right now there's only one available, the shield spell, and we don't have enough money to afford it. Now shield is useful. It improves the armor class of the person who casts it, which, since mages are extremely fragile, improving their armor class is a pretty valuable thing actually. But if we go behind the counter, we find another secret. A secret panel leads to a magic laboratory, or laboratory if you prefer. And here, behind a secret door, is the Wand of Lightning. Lightning is a very powerful spell that does a very high amount of damage. So, we are going to want to save that also for emergencies, because like the Staff of Healing, it has limited charges and will break. And although you can cheese that, I'm not going to. So I'm going to save this for emergencies when we're in deep trouble. Alright, so the Wand of Lightning is going to be very useful to us. We'll save it for when we're in a pinch. And we got a sleep scroll, and here it says the wall is scarred by flame and acid, which suggests to me that somebody has been practicing his magical attack spells down here. Probably the shop owner. Hey man, if you know attack magic, why aren't you helping us on our quest? Whatever. Now, Lucia already knows sleep, so she doesn't have much use for the sleep scroll. However, we're going to go ahead and give it to Draven so that he can scribe that and add it to his spellbook. Right, we have to go to the transfer an item menu for that. Here it is. Transfer that to Draven. And now, if I rest, Draven will scribe the sleep scroll into his spellbook. And I'm going to go ahead and have him memorize that instead of Magic Missile, because I want to see just how well this spell performs. I don't remember using it very much when I played this game in the past, but I have a feeling it might actually be pretty useful if it was implemented according to the pen and paper rules. Okay, let's talk to the bums in here. I mean, they look like bums. They're saying some more generic dialogue. Maybe they're just old. Maybe I'm actually being extremely insensitive. More generic dialogue. Okay, so a lot of these guys don't have anything unique to say. A trapdoor leads to a damp cellar. Now, what was in here? I actually don't remember. Rotten wood chips are ground into the floor. Aha, there is a +1 axe down here. Small pieces of flour and rice litter the floor. Okay. Interesting that the bakery apparently had a magical axe hidden in it. And here's a bunch of beds, so I guess this doubles as an inn, as well as a tavern. Now we are, of course, going to give that +1 axe to Dimsdale, because the axe has to go to the dwarf, right? +1 means that it is a magical weapon and that it's going to improve his chance to hit and his damage with that weapon by 1 point, which doesn't sound like a lot, but because the numbers we're dealing with in BXD&D are quite low, +1 is actually fairly substantial. Now, I believe there was actually something else that I almost forgot about here in the graveyard. There is a mausoleum or crypt here in the corner, which makes sense. And you pick through the remains of King Offord. That really seems like an inappropriate thing to do, guys. I know we're adventurers and all, but maybe don't do that. And it says, the fiefdom of Lindstrom holds this crypt for future use. You feel the eyes of the wizard Castellari, who still haunts his resting place. Well, let's get out of here then. That's a little creepy. The noble knight Kenny Wing honors this crypt. I have a feeling that maybe these names are dev references or something, little Easter eggs they put in. The noble family of Sperry Glen resides in this crypt. That definitely is, because Glenn Sperry was one of the employees of Westwood, so that's definitely a reference there. We did a complete circuit, but the secret, I think, is through a secret door here. It says, the remains of a fighter lie to the west, and Lucia picked up the +1 chainmail. Now that is some very nice armor to have this early in the game. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to give that to Dimsdale, because Lucia already has a pretty respectable armor class due to her dexterity bonus. So that +1 chainmail is going to help make Dimsdale harder to hit. And that's going to be quite useful to us. Now these would appear to be people's homes. Not particularly well decorated, but I think we can just chalk that up to the limitations of the game's graphics rather than being beware the swamps. That guy's not kidding. There are really nasty things in the swamps that will absolutely murder a first level party. But as I was saying, I think we can chalk up the lack of furnishings in these homes to the limitations of the game's graphics rather than being a literal depiction of what they're supposed to be. There are hints about the fact that you can go into these places due to the fact that NPCs walk into them. So the devs were not trying to make these secrets super difficult to find. There are dinosaurs in the swamps. This is true, by the way. Alright, and here is another guard tower. And somewhere in this guard tower, a hatch bolted from the other side leads to the roof, is going to be, there it is, a +1 sword. Very nice. So now we have 2 magical weapons. Good luck on your journeys, thank you. We have 2 magical weapons, a +1 sword for Lucia, and a +1 axe for Dimsdale. You have to manually equip weapons, but your characters will automatically use the best armor that they are carrying. So that is not something you have to equip manually. So we've got 2 +1 weapons. That's going to help make 2 of our fighting characters more effective. We've got a suit of +1 armor, which has drastically improved Dimsdale's armor class all the way to 3. That is an enormous improvement over what it was before. He's going to be much harder to hit now. And we got 2 healing potions and a staff of healing for our cleric Greldon, which is going to be quite helpful, especially early on. Our party is going to be in a lot of danger early in the game because we're first level and so frail and weak. So emergency healing, if we're going to use it at any time, early on in the game is actually a fairly likely time for that. And for emergencies only, we have a Wand of Lightning for our magic user Draven, just in case we run into something really nasty that we absolutely have to take out. These items are going to really help make up for the fact that we're a weak, fragile first level party and help us to survive the early stages of the game. Now I'm going to hit the shops Sell stuff I don't need anymore and see if there's anything of interest for us to buy. Okay, so I don't need this ordinary axe anymore. I don't need this spear either. And honestly, a sword feels to me more like an elf weapon than a spear. I don't know why, it just does. I don't really have a justification for that. I don't want to sell any of this other stuff. Now, does this guy have anything interesting for us to buy? The slings. Those only cost 2 gold pieces, and we are really going to want ranged attacks for everybody. So we're going to buy slings for everyone. And equip them to everybody. That skull on Greldon, by the way, is Turn Undead, which is an incredibly useful ability, but it's going to be a long time before we encounter any undead. So while it's going to be a fantastic ability when the time comes, we're not going to need it for a good long while. Now let's go ahead and equip those slings on everybody. We'll get better ranged weapons later, but for now, slings are all we've got. There we go. Very nice. I do like in later editions of D&D where magic users get weak attack spells that they can cast at will. I like the feel of that they can always attack with magic rather than having to fall back on slinging rocks, which just feels silly for a spellcaster. It's not that I think they should have powerful magic all the time. I like that that's limited, but it's nice when they can use even weak magic without having to resort to using physical weapons. But this game predates that particular advancement in the mechanics. Now, are there any pieces of armor we don't want? No, we want all of this. If anything, we want more armor than we have. So we can afford leather, and that's the only thing that's for sale right now. So I'm going to get some leather armor for Lucia to improve her AC a little more, and likewise for Greldon. I don't believe Draven can wear any armor, and the game should warn me of that if I try to buy it for him. It does. You can't use this item. Do you want it? No, I don't. It's very nice that the game actually warns you of that. And I don't need to equip that. It is done automatically as long as it's the best armor for that character. So if I go into the inventory now, we can see that Lucia's armor class is improved to 4, and the Greldon's is now 7. So an armor class of 3 and 4 on 2 of my frontline characters is really good. That's going to make them more difficult to hit. We can't quite afford that shield scroll yet, so we will be coming back for that. And that pretty much concludes everything that we want to do in town for the time being. So now we're going to venture out into the wilderness and begin carrying out our charter for the Duke and looking for allies. And we're going to do that starting next episode. So I hope that you'll join me for finally getting started on our journey. See you then, and have a good one, everybody.